Well, hello and welcome back to another Microvellum live event on this 23rd day of August 2017. Today we have a special live Q&A session here lined up for you. We've actually brought back some of our text. We've collected a few common support questions that we've been asked this last week, and we're going to be reviewing those questions and their answers live for you. And of course, we'll also be taking your questions live today. So these educational events, live educational events, are hosted weekly for your benefit, and whether you're already a user of Microvellum or just looking to learn a little bit more about our software, either way, we're glad you're here with us today. If this is the first time that you've participated in our live events, I want to take just a few moments to explain how today's session is going to work. As you've noticed, we're using GoToWebinar for our streaming platform, and this is the palette that you see docked to the right side of your monitor. This is your line of communication to our team, and not just to our presenters, but also to those that we have on helping out with questions behind the scenes. And today we have quite a few techs here with us. So anyways, we're looking forward to helping you today. Don't be shy about asking your questions, and in case you're wondering, this webinar is being recorded. So before we get started with today's scheduled events, I would like to take just a few minutes here, and we're going to chat with one of our longtime users and now current president of Microvellum's User Advisory Board, Gary Balcom. Gary, are you with us today?
I am, Clay.
Perfect. Hey, you sound great. So, Gary, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for being part of this.
Yeah, thank you for coming and attending. I know you're a frequent attendee of these events, and I'm glad that you took a few minutes here to talk a little bit about the User Advisory Group today. So, yeah, back in, let's see, what was it, July? You were nominated as the president of the User Advisory Group. Can you tell us a little bit more about that group and maybe what your role is now within that group?
Sure, Clay. I'm the current president of the group. The board is comprised of several longtime users of Microvellum that span different segments of our industry. The User Advisory Board is independent of Microvellum, and its main purpose is to ensure feedback gets prioritized and communicated back to development to help improve the software for the future.
Right. And so I think we did a lot of that. You missed out on it, but we did a lot of that at the TechCon event that we had back in April. Yeah. And so hopefully you'll be able to attend this year. And in fact, we are going to be making it so that you can, in fact.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And in fact, I went to the first one.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. I recommend anybody going. But yeah. Still a sore spot for me that I missed that one.
Yep. Well, this year being as the president, we kind of have to make sure that we make it so that you can attend. So that's great. So what sort of impact do you feel that this group is having?
Well, it's a bit early, but I can already tell this group's having an impact on the user forums. We can help focus development on things that could really elevate the software in the day-to-day tasks of the end users. Like I said, I got high hopes for the future here.
Yeah. So as the new president, what sort of plans do you have? I mean, we had a great president last time. In fact, he was one of the ones that helped spearhead this whole movement with the User Advisory Group, and that was Zach Dees of Dees Construction. So that was great. But what sort of plans do you think you might be cooking up there in terms of your new role?
Well, one of the first things is just to improve the interaction on the forums. I started Microvellum back in version 6, and I saw a lot more interaction on the forums at that point. There was a lot of users trying to help other users, and I think that was just good for the community. Even get to the point where we're borrowing best practices from one another, and even sharing products. I remember a long time ago there used to be a little sub forum where people were actually putting products in. I put a few in fact, but I'd like to see something like that again. And just general good communication between people. I think the brainstorming collaborative nature of it will help the entire community. So.
Right. Yeah, those forums back in the day were pretty awesome, and we'll work together on bringing some of those things back, perhaps. So yeah, that'll be great. So you have a day job as well at Atlanta Cabinet Shop. Can you tell us a little bit about Atlanta Cabinet Shop and your role within that company?
Sure. Atlanta Cabinet Shop is in Buford, Georgia. We're a northeast suburb of Atlanta. We've been in business since 1928, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer here. We produce restaurant store fixtures and recently came out with a product line of cabinet boxes and cabinet fronts designed to be purchased from cabinet makers through our online store.
Great.
We're a lean operation. We focus a lot on continuous improvement, and through that, we become pretty good at panel processing.
Yeah.
So
that's great. I didn't realize that you had the online store going. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yep. It's in its infancy, but
Yeah.
in fact, I mean, we're always looking for feedback on it to see if somebody is semi-interested. Feel free to browse our site and email me any feedback. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to in terms of the user group and the TechCon event in April, having an exchange of ideas, not just in the software, but in terms of, day-to-day operations and what works, what's not working, trends, things like that. So that's going to be great to have that a part of the event in the coming year.
Absolutely.
So anyways, with your background and experience, I'm definitely expecting some good progress to be made and some good ideas there for development. That's going to be great. So anyways, thanks again for joining us today and taking a few minutes to explain kind of how the user group is working and your role and a little bit about your company. So,
yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, well, let's get back into our regular scheduled programming here for today. We're going to be talking about, we're going to be taking your questions live here in this Q&A session. And so let's see here. Let me look at the questions box that's coming in here. We've got a lot of questions piling in already, and that's great. But let's take a few minutes here, and we're going to shift things over first to one of these questions that comes into support quite often. And it has to do with optimization. Let me get back here to my notes here. So Shane, are you queued up and ready to help us with this one? There's a lot of questions that come in sometimes where people will need to understand how to use the optimizer, whether it be the sawing optimizer, the nesting optimizer, to improve the yield, or even perhaps understand those settings to even adjust the speed.
Sure, I am ready.
All right, great. Let's shift things over to you. I'll make you presenter. And there you have it.
Okay, so you can see my screen?
Yep, we see it.
See the correct screen?
Yeah.
All right, so there's lots of options to control your settings, and there are various things you can do with it depending on what kind of key you have. The first thing you need to do is access your station. So you can access it a couple ways. One is the toolbox setup, and then you got processing station setup, and then you have a list of all your stations. That's one way to do it. Another way to access it is via the work order. So just opening up any work order, and you'll also get the same thing right there. So edit the station, and then you have the nesting tab. Again, this is for a nest I'm showing here. So to improve the settings, we find you have these ones here where we've grouped them up with optimization. So the part grouping set for none and the set for best yield, that will get you the best yield that we can. And then of course, if you have true shape enabled, you can move that slider around. We find that about one tick from left from center is the best option for that. But if you think it could be a little bit better, you can move it over more towards the right. I don't really recommend going all the way to max because that will increase the processing time, the nesting time. Sometimes it acts like it's frozen, and it's not. It's just thinking pretty hard to try and find optimization. Sometimes it will get a better result. Other times it'll be the same exact one as it would be here. So you're not really gaining anything. But there's lots of other ways to fix it. It's just kind of depending on what you're doing. So like various origins, and you can set the small part threshold here, and that will help the yield depending on, and the distance between parts, all that stuff will kind of help the yield. But having the strategies, I've seen some people leave it on smallest X or smallest Y but that even those settings aren't really the best yield. We'll get you the best yield. Hope that helps.
Okay, that's great. All right, let me check these questions that are coming. All right, hey, let's switch over to another one. This is another question that came into our support department. I think it was last week. It was from Connor Brown. This one is, he asked the question, how do I control or how do I print specific reports to different printers by default? So Doug, I was hoping that you would be queued up to be able to help answer this question that Connor Brown submitted last week to our support department.
You bet. That's a great question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, let me share my screen. All right, that's a good question because a lot of people that were using previous versions of Microvellum that used the Crystal Reports engine, it was possible there, and so I mean it's a logical question now using the Stimulsoft engine whether it's still possible. And so basically the short answer to that question, for those of you familiar with the report designer, is yes, we can do it. You define the report level printer property. So most people have an easier time remembering when they see it, so let me show you how to do that. So I've got Toolbox open here. I'm going to go into the report designer, and since I'm using the beta, only these three categories of reports show up that apply to Toolbox. So we'll go into a manufacturing report, and of course I'll open, I think I'll open a master cut report. And once it displays in the viewer here, we'll pick a work order and then go into the designer when that becomes active. And for those, you know, everybody might have a different level of expertise with the report designer, but for those of you that are not familiar with the report level properties, to access those, there's two ways. Probably the easiest one is to make sure you're in the page 1 tab here, as it shows in the upper left corner, and then click in the blue area off to the right, and the report level properties are displayed. And pretty easy. The main property to set, if you expand the printer settings category, the printer name comes up, and if you click the drop down arrow, you'll get a list of your installed printers on your machine. You just pick the printer that's desired, and then when you preview and print, by default, let's let this display, by default, it'll display the printer dialog box, and that printer comes in by default as the one selected. Now, if you don't want to print that or display that printer dialog box, just set the show dialog property to false. And now when you print your report, actually you have to go out of this to, that's a good point, that you have to go back to page 1, access it, and then preview again. And now I've activated the print, and it doesn't even show the dialog. It just sends it directly to the printer. And one other thing I wanted to show you here is that it's also possible to set that printer name to a PDF generator. So I've got a Foxit reader here that's set, that I have set up. I'll set this to, let's just leave it at false. Now if I go into the preview and print that, it displays a box with where I want to save that PDF, and it's automatically generated at that location then. So that's a pretty easy way to do it. And of course, once you make these adjustments, go ahead and click your preview button, make sure there's no errors. And if there's no errors, go ahead and save your report with the save button in the extreme upper left corner, and then you can shut it down and proceed with whatever you're doing. So that should answer that question.
Yeah, I think it does. Thanks a lot, Doug, for that. All right, so let's, we're going to go to the live stream here of the questions. We've got a couple that are coming in here that have to do with library data. So we have one from Tom and another from Jeffrey. So I think we're going to switch things over to Lenny. Lenny, are you queued up here? We've got a couple questions here that I think would be right up your alley to be able to answer.
I shall do my best.
Sweet.
Okay. So yeah, a couple questions. I will start with the first one, the easy one first. That might be a little bit basic for some of you, but maybe there's a lot of new people as well on the line. And the question is, please show how to create visible prompts and have them show up in tabs in the product prompt. So what the question is referring to, all of our products, of course, have a prompts interface, right? So this is just an open base cabinet. And then we have these tabs that allows us to organize, all of our different, we call them prompts, or basically options, right? And so the question is involving how do you move stuff around? Like maybe there's something on the advanced that you would rather have on the main tab. Well, this is all totally user definable, and it's being controlled inside the product spreadsheet. So every one of these products, of course, is a little spreadsheet. And if you, the worksheet here called prompts, of course, is what drives that little interface that I was just showing you. And it's really just simply a matter of, here are the prompts. So a 4 is checkbox. These are radio buttons. This is fill in the blank. A 5 is going to be like a combo box. So that kind of tells, the program what to display. And then as far as the tabs, we have a thing called a tab list. And this column here tells the interface, what all the tabs are. So if we wanted to add a new tab, we could even, slip one in anywhere in here. New tab, all right. And the way you just kind of have to look at this like how the computer or how the program thinks. It's going to always start from the row 1 and work its way down until it finds a blank, and then it stops looking. And it numbers them, and it's kind of odd. It starts at 0, so we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So I know that this new tab that I created is going to be 1, 2, 3. It's going to be tab index 3, and which refers to this. So this is how you assign what prompt goes on what tab. So they're kind of organized in a helpful manner in that, the 0 ones are first, and then, the tab index 1, and then you can see it kind of goes to 2, and then it goes on to 3, 4, and so on. So this new tab here, which is 3, let's put, I don't know, just to make it obvious, let's say left finished in, right finished in is going to be on this new tab. So I'm just going to say, assign those a 3, and let's see what happens. Let's save and close, and then reopen. And we can see here's our new tab, and it has those 2 checkboxes. So that's a real quick crash course on how this whole interface works and how it's so user definable. It's even dynamic in the sense like I can have this checkbox turn on other tabs. I click this box, and then there's a formula that turns on that you can see how we are turning tabs on and off. So you can even do that. So now we have this whole other feature where things are turning on and off dynamically. So that's the power of it's a good example of the power of the spreadsheet that we use. It's not just about the cabinet parts, it's also our interface. Okay, so enough on that question. Good question. Let's see. Oh, the question was, there's good ones here. Can you show me the product starter that has an insert in place like a divider in the cabinet from the library? So yeah, in our product library here we have, one door base with dividers and then divisions, etc. There's also a starter cabinet, which is this. So I just went to the product starters. We have horizontal and vertical and base, tall, upper, etc. So I just went to this horizontal guy. I drew it in here. And the way this works is you specify how many bays you want. So I just said I want 2 bays. All right, so it's separated with a division, and on bay, it always goes left to right, so bay 1 and 2. is going to be left to right. So I on the number 2, sorry, there's nothing. And then bay 1, you come into here into the interior components, and you've got a variety of these smart little sub-assemblies that can be put into the opening. And we do have one out of the shipping library, the current shipping library, called Fixed Shelves with Dividers. So I just picked that, and then you can see it added. So we can even put one on the other side like that, and come up with all kinds of interesting, cabinet layouts that are parametric and interesting. So I change to a front view. And look at that. And when I say it's parametric, so I can make this cabinet bigger. Oops, not that big. That would be interesting. I try to avoid building 400-inch wide cabinets. That doesn't seem to fit so well in the doorway. But there's that cabinet. Okay, and then there was the final question was something about countertop thicknesses. That's kind of a complex one. I guess I can say we do have a video on the new help site here about countertop products under data development and management. There's a product overview video all about the non-extruded countertops. So that's kind of a big topic. We've got countertops that are for construction, and then we have countertops like this thing here, which is really just intended for graphical or just to represent, it's just for maybe rendering or whatever. But so if that's what the question was referring to, I would cruise down into that countertop subassembly, which is here. And there's a global variable called countertop thickness. So I would start with that, find that global variable, countertop thickness, and that's how you could change that guy in there by going to globals. Notice the new interface, guys. Hey, this is all new. Can't wait for you to get that. Countertop thickness, what did I say? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, there it is. So there's a global variable that lets us specify that. Although, for the sake of time, I won't get into actually showing you that because sometimes there's other things you need to do. Like, for example, if it's a bullnose profile, you can't just change it to some odd shape, but that's a whole nother ball of wax there. Okay, Clay, is there any other questions that you've seen since I've been talking about library data?
I've seen a couple come in, but I'm not sure. You might want to take a look at the stream there, and if there's some that jump out at you that you want to do again, just let me know and we'll queue that up. But for now,
Hog up the whole hour.
Yeah. So for now, I think we're going to switch things over to Daniel. We had a question that came in, and the question was, when I copy items from the product list from one drawing to another, the products do not show up in the drawings. And so I think Daniel's going to show us that one, and we do see your screen, so take it away, Daniel.
All right, and you can hear me okay?
Yep, just fine.
All right. Yeah, so the question came in of just, what exactly is this product viewer? How does it work? And so I just kind of wanted to review that a little bit. We have the ability when we open up a drawing to see a list of all the products that are inside this drawing. And they are, as you can see here, I am currently in room 1, and I have just one product drawn, just this one door base. But I have 3 products that are actually inside this room. And we color code these so that way if it is a blue, if it has some blue text, that means that this is currently drawn into the AutoCAD drawing. And if it's green, that means that this product has not yet been drawn into the AutoCAD drawing. And you will notice that this list is current on the drawing that we have. So if we, for example, switch over to room 2 and then look at our product viewer, this will not show the products unless we have the correct room that is currently open based off of our current room here. So it's just a way that we kind of protect the product list or our product viewer here of the products that are shown, so that way we don't actually view products that aren't associated to the current room. And if you switch the current drawing and you can hit this refresh here, that will kind of show you the current products that are available. So sometimes you have multiple rooms that you want to work with. I do have a room 2 that I've set up, And if we actually go into the product list, this gives us a higher view of all of our products for the entire project. So we'll jump into our product list here, and you can see that we have the ability to see all of our rooms, and if we click through the different rooms, we have the ability to see what products are inside of each one. So using this, we can now manage products from room to room. So if, for example, we wanted to move one of these two-door bases to another room, we can go ahead and just select, let's move this one to room 2. And then when we select that, we can see that now we have this item number 1.03 in room 2. And then if we were to jump into our AutoCAD view here, and let's go ahead and open up that room 2. When we go to our product viewer, we now have the ability to see this product. Now, what's also really neat about this is we added a lot of tools that are available through the right-click menu. So if you select a product and you right-click, you can see that we have the ability to draw the product from here. So we can go ahead and place this at a selected point. We can place this on a wall if we already had geometry set up in here. So let's go ahead and just draw this into the drawing. And once that is drawn, in just a second here. So now we can see that that has flipped from the green text to blue, letting us know that it's been drawn. And there's a lot of other quick access commands too if you want to be able to access the spreadsheet of a specific product. You're not sure where it's at in the drawing. You can just find it here in the product list and say edit design data, and that will bring up the spreadsheet so you can go ahead and begin editing that. So a lot of cool tools that are available throughout the product viewer here, and a way that we can manage our products inside of our project.
All right, Daniel, thanks a lot for that. Okay, so let's have a look at another common question that we get that comes in. I think this time we're going to shift it over to Joe Rubio, who's going to help us out with the question that has to deal with setting up alternate configurations. So Joe, are you queued up there?
Sure thing.
Yeah, so the question comes in a lot about how to set up alternate configurations, and maybe even why you might want to set up an alternate config.
Okay. So a lot of times you want to have different configurations, and I can demonstrate that why by sharing my screen. There we go. Okay. All right. Everybody got my screen, and I have several configurations that that I have set up here. I can show you every time you launch the splash screen comes up and you have options to select from all of the configurations that you have available. A lot of times you have multiple libraries that you've been testing, or you have an old library that you want to keep running in conjunction with setting up the new library. So every time you install a library, it sets up a configuration automatically for you. But if you want to do something like set up an alternate configuration to use as a sandbox environment, you'd want to set up your own configuration. So the way that you do that is by going to Toolbox Setup and copying a configuration. So you can copy any of your existing configurations. I'm going to start out with the one that I use day to day as the 46.1. I'm going to copy that and say OK. And this is going to be my sandbox. And say OK. Now I'm going to have an additional configuration in my list, sandbox, but that is an exact copy of my 46.1. So I have to make some changes, and in order to do that, you have to close out and restart. The only way to switch configurations is by closing your program. Okay. And then you start back up. And when you start back up, you select your new configuration that you've just configured, you just set up. That's going to be sandbox. So right now it's still looking to the same data, and it still has everything exactly the same as the original. And what you do is you go into Toolbox Setup, Options, Data Access. Now, if I was making an actual sandbox of my my server copy, it would have already been set up to server, and I would have to transfer tables in order to make a copy of my server data and then make that a local compact edition copy. But since that would take a little bit of time beyond the scope of this this seminar, I'm just going to show that I've switched to a SQL compact edition, and then you change path to Microvellum data. So you select the Microvellum data, you scroll to the location where that data is stored, in this case 46.1, and you select the new path to Microvellum data, and you would change it. If yours was a server, you'd change it from server to compact edition, and then it would close, and once again you'd restart so that it reinitializes that information. But then at that point you would have a sandbox environment, a copy of your SQL server on your local computer that you could do your testing on, and you could make modifications to without worrying about messing up anybody else's information or deleting any active jobs. You can then test updates, you can make modifications to the library, and you can be sure that it's not going to affect any of your current jobs. And then every time you boot up, you have the option to select either your server or your sandbox environment in order to boot to, and you can work in either mode. So that's one big reason to have multiple configurations, and they're installed either when you do a library update or anytime that you want to create another configuration in order to test anything. So that's about all.
All right.
Send it back to Clay.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joe. That was a really thorough explanation of that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So let's, we're going to change it up a little bit again, and we're going to go back to Shane. There's a question that came in a few days ago from support. It was actually from Matt from Atlantic Commercial Casework. He's been using Solid Model Analyzer and our extruded product builder tools. And he had a question I thought was pretty good to highlight here. And so he asks, when creating products using Extruded Product Builder or Solid Model Analyzer, parts that are longer than 96 will not produce real parts. They only produce blocks. Even when the assigned material is greater than 96 inches long, we need to be able to produce products with parts longer than 96 inches. So Shane, I think this means that we should take a look at those optimizer settings or the Solid Model Analyzer settings to help them with that. Are you prepared to help us with that?
I am.
Sweet. There we go.
Okay, so you can see my screen, I hope.
Yep.
All right, so a couple things that you need to watch for when you're building your product is you have to watch your layer manager. So let's go ahead and show that. So the Smart Layer Manager comes up. This is just what I have in here currently. And if you right click on here, you can find the material. For instance, this is one cherry plywood, and you can see the part length is 96. So that's going to matter. That's going to be how much it's going to break it. And so you want that number at or below what your material thickness, what your material lengths are in your library. So you want to make sure that is set. Another one, if we shut this down and we go to your options page, Solids tab, this is where you can configure Solid Model Analyzer as far as what it's reading. So you can see this is our limits for material size. So right now it's set for 1.9 inches. That's the minimum part size it'll come up with, and the maximum would be 96. So you can set that number right there if you want the maximum. See, I got 120 inch material, so then you could set that up to 120 and then process that. Same thing goes for your material thickness. This is how the thickness of your sheets. And there's also other various things in there. You can control what diameters of tools you have and what you want it to read. So if you wanted to read a different tool, you can drill it down and say, I only want it to pick up my 1/2-inch tool. So then you set the minimum, the maximum enough to where it'll only pick up that tool. So that's one of the ways of doing that. And you can see there's other various things you can do with this thing, but the main thing that people need to watch for is the part size and material thickness.
All right, Shane, thanks for that. I think that's a good explanation of how that works. And so the main reason we are showing those as blocks is because we still want them to draw so that you can see them in your product, but not necessarily do anything about it. For example, if you're analyzing a product that has casters or something like that, piece of hardware on there, you're not going to try to nest a leg level or something like that. So that's partly why these settings are important.
Right.
Great. Okay. So we've been taking a look at these questions that are coming in the stream. Lots of really great questions, and I think Lenny is itching here, chomping at the bit to get back on live here to answer some of these. And we're going to do so by asking him the question that is another question that is pretty common that comes in frequently, and that is, how do I get dimensions and annotations to appear automatically on sections and 2D elevations? So perhaps, Lenny, you can help us with that one, and then maybe touch on some of the other items that you see there from the live stream.
Sure do. Sure thing.
Yep.
Switch me over. Okay, yeah, so one of the questions was about getting the cabinets to be at a certain set sizes, and so I think a lot of people either aren't aware of this or forget to check or to experiment with this in your options here in Microvellum options toolbox. You've got this accuracy setting, which can have a lot of effect on all kinds of things, from reports to what things show up in those prompts, even to the spreadsheet. So experiment with, decimal versus fraction, and then the different accuracy. As far as if we go to our draw 2D, and let's just do a section of, I don't know, this guy here, throw it over here. Some of you may or may not be aware. How about I do a section this time? So that's the elevation. So we've got this, cross plan elevation, and you can pick a cutting plane, or you just accept the default, which is in the middle. And this stuff about tokens, to include them or not. So, you may or may not have seen this, but you may want to know, well, where does all this come from? How do I control it? How do I make it better? Of course, you can talk to 50 different draftsmen, and you're going to get 50 different, opinions of how this should look, which is totally fine. That's what's so cool, that it's actually all coming from that spreadsheet again. So we have in the prompts, if you keep scrolling over, you have some sections that repeat over and over again. So you've got the name of the section, and then you're going to have 9 parameters, and then it repeats. So there's elevation, cross-section, and of course this one doesn't have a door. So if you don't see it in here, you may be stumped. You're like, well, this doesn't have anything. Well, it's the carcass, so they're coming from the carcass. So same thing, it's just a subassembly. Go over to the prompt, scroll over, and there we go. So there's our plan view, and our elevation view, and our cross-section. So a lot of these things, like for example, the line for the floor and the wall, that yellow guy right there, it's just simple, a token name, and then, the parameters. And of course, no one's going to memorize what all of these parameters mean. I'm never able to memorize them all. Normally, you can probably kind of figure it out just by elimination. But if you need for reference, so let's take one of these, for example, draw dim, and I want to maybe work on this. If you go into the help and do a search, and we have draw token list. So here we go. So you've got, the name of the tokens, like I was showing you, and then the 9 parameters. And there's all kinds of really cool ones. Draw polylines, rectangles, arcs, adding text. So use this as a reference when you're developing your new tokens, and you can, do all kinds of stuff. And then of course, these are coming from the parts, so that hatching is going to come from in the material file. You can pick that material and change the hatching. As far as learning more stuff, a lot of good questions about, well, like this one person wants to learn more about helping his engineering department solve, various challenges, a lot of the questions that we've been presented. So we've been feeling really convicted about that, Microvellum as an organization. And so we went back to this help center and we did a lot of restructuring again, even just recently, as far as the last couple of weeks. We removed a lot of the content that was perhaps feeling a little bit outdated. Maybe it's from an older version of Microvellum, so we put that in the, in like a legacy section. So if you're using an older version, we just wanted to separate those out. And but for me personally, I've been working on this one here. It's all about library data, which is the nature of a lot of your questions. So we have a whole list of videos. It's just about specific products. This is all about specific subassemblies. This gets into spec groups. And then we've got more coming soon on some of these other categories. But we've got help with formulas, help with machine tokens, all of the tools that we have at our disposal, about product creation and editing tools, stuff about hardware. This is like just general automation of your library, graining and just overall things, and then just like FAQ or miscellaneous things. And a lot of these videos they're quite rich with information. So let's take a look at this category. Like someone just asked me a question about corner cabinets, right? Well, corner cabinets are, as you know, quite involved. So this particular video, it's not just a quick 2-minute video. It gets into it for about 20 minutes. Luckily, it's a video. You can scrub through it. But when we made these, we want to be very exhaustive and helpful and try to anticipate every question that you may have about, whatever the topic is. And we're tagging these, cross-linking them to other videos, other related ones. So hopefully you guys enjoy these videos and find them to be helpful. You can see we have a master list of all the videos that we're making. Some are still being produced, but there's a lot of content on here that's ready for to go to school and learn library data, because that is a big part of Microvellum, and whether or not you have success is to make sure that your parts are coming out the right size and however you are expecting them to behave anyway. And this affects your shop drawings. It affects so much, is that library data. And so I hope you'll find those videos to be very helpful. And let me see here if I have any other new questions. Help me out, Clay. Did I miss? Okay, so here's a question. The corner cabinets, he's asking, the video would require me to upgrade to 46. And that, of course, is could be a challenge. A lot of times it's hard to update. And that may or may not affect you. Some of the videos do, even though it's on the current library, a lot of the context goes back many versions of the library, so you may still find it helpful. Or you may find a new product that, hey, your library doesn't have. You can, with varying success, you can grab a new product and put it in your old library and poke around with it and get it to work. And a lot of people, that's what I used to do. Download the new library, not necessarily to use it, but I would cherry pick things out and sort of enhance my catalog. So here's, this is the latest catalog, right? So you can pull products in and out from older versions. Let's see here. Boy, a lot of good questions. I can tell you guys were very prepared. Oh, sorry, that was the thing I was going to ask. The drawing token. Well, I did show dimensions and annotations appear automatically on sections. I guess I did kind of show you that. This was the section. This is the elevation. So in the newer libraries, we have a whole tab now for drafting. We found this to be just a way to give you more control over what's getting presented, both in all the different views. So you've got, you can move that item number around. You can change on the fly the layers of your parts. You can, anything having to do with those AutoCAD labels that appear, you can change the color, label, text style. Elevation, so that little FE or for finished end that appears, you can rotate that 90 degrees if you wanted to. A lot of stuff to help that automate those shop drawings. Control the distance of the text. I don't have anything in this library at the moment for the sections, but you could add your own stuff in here to hook up. plan view, right? There's a plan description that you could have appear. You can turn on and off the end dimension. So a lot of stuff that's already cooked in to the products that's connecting to those tabs or those tokens that I showed you. And you can kind of see how that's happening by looking at the formula here. So plan view, right? So the zeros simply mean that token is off at the moment. So for, you know, the right side wall filler, if it's a 0, you know, if there's no filler, it's not going to show the filler token. But as soon as you turn on that filler, this is going to turn on. So if I say, yeah, there is a, you know, a 2-inch filler right there, then you'll see how that will then just turn on. There it is. So that's the kind of, to me, it's kind of addicting. I don't know. I get into this. I guess that's why I do what I do. It's really fun to dial this in because once it's done, it's done. You don't ever have to draw that anymore. So whenever, you know, when you are drawing your products, it's just going to happen. So I don't know, Clay, I'm starting to ramble, so you better get the hook and hook me out here, unless there's something I missed. Or maybe I should be reading the questions. Boy, you guys have good questions.
Yeah, I think you're doing great, Lenny.
The dimension lines are not on the part. Why is that? So let's look at a draw dim, back width dim, right filler dimension. Yeah, I mean, I would say if the dimension is not appearing where you want it to, so it's looking at that section, draw dim, so like the dimension for the countertop height, all right? So parameter 1 and 2 are 0. Draw dim, what do we have here? So start X, start Y. So those are both 0. Then 3 and 4 is, I got too many windows open. End X, end Y. Whoa. So of course the end X is going to be the height plus, because as in the way these products are designed, of course the height is defined to the top of the box plus whatever that countertop thickness is. So that's going to give us the 36. And then parameter 4 is the leader length. What did I say? 4? I mean 5 is the leader length. So that's going to be looking to the global variable select dimension offset vertical. Yeah, and so then that reminds me global. So there's global variables that affect not just the one product but everything. So maybe, you know, this 4 inches is not the right value. Well, that G tells me I can control that. So let's go look at Mr. Global. And we have shop drawings, 2D section, elevation. Wow, look at all this stuff. So we can globally change stuff that's going to affect, of course, every product that's using that spec group. So, but it does take a little bit of trial and error. You know, you can make a manipulation and then redraw it and see what it did. And then once you get it happy, you know, then you may have to either save it back, or I would, you know, some people use Library Designer, depending on if you want the nature of the change. And the Library Designer tool, of course, allows us to make sweeping changes to all your cabinets at once, which that is a whole nother topic. Let's see. Questions.
Yeah, Lynn, if you want to take a look at those questions, see if there's any others that you want to highlight. I think there's one that Lucas chatted with me about highlighting. You can probably switch things over to Lucas while you get back to that stream.
Yeah, I'm good. It's hard. You know, some of these topics, frankly, it's you pulling on a string that really takes a half an hour.
Yeah.
But if you have any requests for those videos, you know, you can go ahead and interact with me on those user forums and say, hey, you know, Lenny, how about a video on this topic? Here it is here. So like if you look in these, a lot of these categories, we have videos that are going to be coming soon. So for example, machining. So I have queued up a bunch of videos that we're going to get into for setting up your machining. Well, if there's something here that seems like it's missing, go ahead and shoot me a comment. It says, hey, Lenny, you know, we have trouble with, can we do a library data video about this, right? And so we can certainly entertain those as well. So like Gary was saying in the offset, you know, these forums or this help site is a great way to interact with one another, not just Microvellum Corporate teaching you. We can all learn from one another. You know, I myself personally learn a lot from you guys that are sort of in the trenches or using this every day, that go to the forums here and pose really good questions and challenge us with things. So go ahead and take advantage of that tool that you have. All right. Thanks, Clay.
All right. All right, so yeah, there's a question here that came in from the stream here, the question stream that I think Lucas would be perfect to help with, and that is, what is the best way to export a true CSV? In our reports, we're getting all kinds of extra columns depending on the design of the data layout. Is there a way to create a CSV file output that limits these extra columns? So Lucas, are you ready to help us with an answer to this one?
Yes, I am, Clay.
All right, so let me make you presenter, and away we go.
All right, can everybody see my screen there?
Yeah, we see it.
All right, perfect. So one of the common things that comes up, especially when exporting reports, because there are a lot of different formats that you can use. You can use Adobe PDF, XPS, HTML, you know, Excel. One of the common things that comes up with exporting to Excel is people saying that we're getting extra columns or extra spaces where we don't need them. So here I just created a very simple report that just shows the products or item numbers with height and depth. And when I saved this to Excel, this was what I got in here. So you can see we have a couple extra columns in here. And even between the products themselves, we have a couple extra rows that aren't needed. And this all really comes down to the spacing of the components in the report. And spacing is really going to have a direct effect on how your exported Excel is going to show up. So what I mean by that is here in my report, I have a simple report that has a couple components on there with a open space here at the bottom. So if I wanted to be able to resolve that, what I would need to do is I'd need to make sure the spacing is exactly what I'm expecting for in the report. So I can minimize that spacing here at the bottom. I'd want to be able to make sure my components are touching each other just right at the right size here. And as we rearrange some of these component sizes so that we get our spacing correctly in the report designer, what we'll see is with the exported report that these extra columns will start to go away. Let me do that for these last couple ones here. And so you can select multiple components to resize just by windowing the components that you're looking at here. And I think I have probably one in here that needs a little bit better spacing done to it. Ooh, wrong one. Let me just select this one here. We'll bring that over. And so there with my spacing, so that they're all touching each other and they're lined up correctly. When I preview this, we'll see we get the same kind of preview on here. There's not much that's changed. But where this is really going to affect it is whenever we save this file as like an Excel format, for example. Just save that one here really quick. Sorry if I close that out first. All right, now we'll save this as an Excel file here. And so when we go to open up this report, what we're going to see, one second. All right, so when we go open up this report now, what we'll see is that our spacing here is correct. We don't have any additional columns. Looks like maybe we have a little bit of spacing going on here still in between it where we have a small amount, so we can make some adjustments there as well. So might just need to bring that up like one notch here. So bring that up there. So it can be difficult sometimes to get the spacing exactly right. But essentially what I wanted to show here is just that the components themselves are really what affects the spacing when you export it to Excel. And getting that spacing correct is what's going to help reduce those amount of spacings that are in there. So there we can see that my row spacing now, I just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that spacing is correct. So yeah, that's how you can format your report so that you get the correct columns and everything like that. And that's it.
Okay, thanks Lucas for that. And I think you had good timing there. It's straight up 12 over here in Oregon. So we'd like to thank you guys for attending, for taking the time out of your busy day. Thanks to everyone, all the techs that helped out with this today, and a special thanks too to Gary Balcom for joining us. We're definitely looking forward to the coming months of your involvement there with the user group. And just a note on that, our user group conference is currently being planned, and more information and a specific date will be released soon for this, but we're looking at the end of April to the beginning of May. So if you are interested in that, just watch your email and for more information about that event. All right, also, before we end today, let me switch things back over to my screen. Before we end today, I'd like to just highlight something that we have coming up next week. This same time, same place next week, next Wednesday, we will be having another live event on the 30th, and this one is going to be presented by Adam Dierig of Dierig Design. He's a longtime user of version 6.7 and now a current user of version 15, and we're going to examine together the reasons that drove him to want to upgrade, to make the leap forward. As a draftsman and a business owner, Adam offers a unique perspective and can provide valuable insight for those who are considering making that switch or upgrading to the latest release. So if you're in that decision-making process, trying to figure out if you're wanting to upgrade, I definitely encourage you to register for that one and to attend next week's. So it should be great. All right, so as you exit the webinar, don't forget to take that exit survey. We've been getting a lot of good feedback from you guys, so we'd like to see that keep your responses keep coming. So that's great. Let us know how we did. We'll keep this questions box going for just a few more minutes here as we end today, but I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on our next Microvellum Live event.